Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of our Buffalo Wings. The Wings are in their first year. They are an expansion team, and you can see we're not very good. 43-60 record on the year as August begins, coming off of our worst month of the season with a 7-18 record. You can see we're pretty poor offensively, ranking 27th out of 32 teams in baseball, and pretty poor defensively, ranking 27th in ERA out of 32 teams in baseball. So, not a shock that we are 43-60. Our hope is certainly that we can play somewhat better baseball than we have been recently over the last couple of months of the season to avoid a 100 loss season this year. And then we will be heading into the off season with potentially a good amount of money to spend. Who knows what's going to happen to our budget, generating pretty decent revenue per game. We upped ticket prices once this year a bit from $28 to $32. And we certainly have room in our maxed out scouting budget and our very high player development budget to cut those down also. So the big question is really going to be if we can make some waves in free agency this year. Looking at the upcoming free agents, doesn't look like there's any true superstars this year. Jose Abreu, who's on our team, ranks as one of the better free agents out there, and we're probably not going to take him back at age 39. Certainly possible that some other things will change over the coming couple months of the season, and there may be additional players out there that aren't expected. Just from a quick look, Kevin Gausman certainly could be an interesting starting pitcher for us to consider adding. Certainly older than we'd like at 35, and he's going to be 36 before next season starts. He split this year between AAA and the majors, probably coming off of an injury, I'm guessing, and has been 4-2 with a 3.04 ERA for the Las Vegas A's. He'd certainly be one interesting way to potentially go. Shane Bieber, a little bit younger. Looks like he's viewed as a reliever right now because of the modest stamina. Put up a 2.79 ERA and 48 and a third innings pitched this year. If we were to bring him on board, I think we'd certainly be trying to turn him into a guy that we could get 5 innings out of as a starter, given that our pitching has been so bad. And we'll obviously be taking a hard look at the trade market in the offseason also. But initial review is that it's not a potentially incredible free agent class upcoming this year in the 2026 to 2027 offseason. But as I said, a lot can change between now and then. And it's been a pretty good start to the month of August for our Wings. We took the final 2 games in the series against San Francisco. Then we did lose 2 out of 3 to the Cubs, but we just completed a 4-game sweep against the Marlins. So certainly a 7-2 record for our first 9 games of the month is much better baseball than we've been playing. As I mentioned, we were 7-18 in the month of July. So here we are on August 9th, and we've already won as many games in August as we won in the month of July. And most notably, in the 2-0 win over Miami on Friday, Martin Perez, a guy who we're probably not going to bring back next year, hurled a no-hitter. He's 7-12 with a 4.84 ERA. Obviously, his statistics helped by the brilliant no-hitter. That said, he's going to be 36 years old by the start of next season, and he hasn't been great for us this year. We'll see what his numbers look like at the end of the year. We'll also see what kind of money he's looking for when he hits free agency, but he was the starting pitcher in the first game ever for the Buffalo Wings, and he's now in the record books as the first pitcher to ever throw a no-hitter for the Buffalo Wings, and we got one in our first season in baseball, so that's a pretty impressive feat for the Wings and for Marty Perez. And in another good piece of news, our young outfielder Lloyd Del Chapelle just named National League Player of the Week, 12 for 25 with a homer and 6 ribbies. Unfortunately, Chapelle is now out for a good chunk of the rest of the season with a herniated disc in his neck. So we put him on the 10-day IL, but he's going to be out for about 6 weeks. That will give us an opportunity to see what the young outfielder Eric Pena can do. Another guy that we picked up in the expansion draft, split the year between AA Utica and AAA Albany, and he's hit 31 home runs across both levels, given that we don't have a ton of offense. Certainly think that he looks capable of hitting some balls out of the ballpark, gives us another left-handed bat. He's probably going to strike out a decent amount. He struck out 140 times this year between AA and AAA. But if he can hit some home runs for us and give us a little bit of offense, he could certainly put himself in a position where he's going to be competing for a roster spot at the major league level next season. And I guess the good news is that we've now won more games than we won in the month of July, and it's only August 16th, and we've got 9 wins, but we've lost 2 series in the row on the road to the first place in the Division Nationals, and then we did lose 2 out of 3 also at Philadelphia, who's a team that's competing with us to be at the bottom of the division this year. You can see there's still 4 teams in the NL East separated by 3.5 games at the top of the division. Then an 11.5 gap in the standings, and then there's 4 teams separated by 2 games fighting for last. We're 6-4 over our last 10, so playing a bit better than the teams that we're competing for the basement with. I just kind of want to avoid being last place. I guess that's a second goal in addition to not losing 100 games. Also would be preferable to not be in last place this year. Can see the other expansion team, the Stars, is 55-63, so they are 3 games better than our Wings in the standings at this point. We are 13.5 behind in the wild card, and quite honestly, we're the closest to the wild card of the teams that absolutely have no chance at getting the wild card. I don't really think that that's worth anything, but been playing a little better of late. Hopefully we can keep that up. We're going to make one move. Deshaun Seifu, the number 1 overall pick for ours, has been in Jamestown for about the last 3 weeks, our high A ball team. Batting average has dipped to 257 at that level, but still we rescouted him just recently, and you can see his contact's already up to 60 out of 80. According to our scout, it was 50 out of 80 when we drafted him. Gap power still looks like it could be off the charts. Avoiding Ks is at 55 right now, and his eye is up to 40. I believe that was 35 before. I don't have to make this stuff up or try to remember it. I could just look here and show you all. But yeah, I mean, we think that his contact has already jumped from 50 to 60. His power still minimal. His eye a little bit better, and he's actually gotten slightly better defensively. So he is going to be closing in on a major league spot soon. Given that we're going to be looking for him to be in the majors probably sometime next year, and it's conceivable that he could have a September call-up with us. We've been trying to get him maxed out at shortstop, which is allegedly his natural position, but several of you have mentioned in the comments, and I completely agree with. I don't see him being a shortstop for us for the long term. I think second or third base is where we're going to have him end up, so we're going to start giving him some playing time at those positions. Certainly don't expect him to have mastered those positions over the last month plus of the season. He could potentially have in AA and maybe AAA, and who knows, maybe the majors. But we're going to definitely be forced starting him to get him in the lineup every day, and then to also ensure that he gets a little more versatile as far as the positions he can play defensively. And 2-4 week a week ago got even worse, believe it or not. 1-5 on the week. We got swept on the road against the White Sox, and then we took only 1 of 3 at home against Cleveland. Got some divisional action to finish off the month of August. We've got 4 at home against the Mets, 3 at home against Washington, and then we finish up on the road in Montreal on August 31st. Clearly likely to be a pretty tricky schedule for us. Those 4 games against the Mets, they're obviously one of the better teams in the division, and they are right in the middle of a intense battle for the wild card, with a bunch of teams separated by a game and a half for the wild card spots, or at least the last 2 wild card spots in the National League. So if I could add, it looks like there's 7 teams within a game and a half of the final. Actually, there's 3 wild card spots now. If I could remember that there's only 2 divisions in this league that I created. Regardless, there's 7 teams within a game and a half for 3 wild card spots. The Cubs have a bit of an advantage, 2 games up on all of those other teams at this point. So we'll see what happens there. You can see we've fallen down to 7th, 3-7 in our last 10 games. Only 1 game ahead of the Phillies at this point. Nashville at 58-66 is starting to pull away from us in the expansion derby of 2026. And somewhat surprisingly, we were pretty respectable against the Mets and the Nationals, the 2 first division teams. We split the 4-game series at home against the Mets, and then we took 2 out of 3 against Washington. So 1 game left on the road in Montreal, and then we will be at September roster expansion. But before we even go on the road trip, we're going to promote Deshaun Seifu to AAA. We've been playing him at second base, and you can see he's obviously picked up the position very quickly. Only in Utica for 11 games, hit .289 at that level. Looking at his profile, don't see any reason to not promote him up to AAA. The only change that we're going to make, we are going to start him at third base there, and I don't think he'll pick up that position quite as quickly as he picked up second base, but certainly want to ensure that he is as well-rounded defensively as possible. He obviously won't be a September 1st call-up. Conceivably, though, could we give him a little major league action before the end of this season? I think it's possible. And we blew out the Expos on the road in our final game of the month of August, so we'll take a quick look at how things ended up after the fast start and then the pretty crummy middle to late section of the month. We still ended up with a 15-14 record for the month. Obviously, things slowed down considerably after that first week and a half of the month, but still just the second time this season that we've had a winning record for the month. We are in 6th place, 17 and a half games back as the month of September begins, and we're only 5 wins away from ensuring that we won't be a 100-loss club this year, so certainly would expect that we're going to achieve that. We've opened up a little space on us recently between the Marlins and the Phillies, who are really sinking with 6 losses in a row. Who knows what's going to happen over the course of the month of September. We've got 2 more in this brief road trip to Montreal, and then we are home for the Angels at the end of this week. And for one of our September call-ups, we're going to go with Humberto Rosado. He's a guy who was a minor league free agent signing of ours. You can see we brought him up through Utica and AA, Albany and AAA, and Albany and AAA again this year, where he's gone 12-7 with a 3.45 ERA. Captain personality, Humberto Rosado. Looks like he's a back end of the rotation pitcher if he's a starter. Not even sure if we'll actually start him in the majors, but we're going to give him an opportunity. And then the other opportunity is going to go to the young first baseman Brady House, a guy that we picked up in the expansion draft. He's hit .293 with 39 homers and 93 ribbies in AAA this year. Clearly is a guy that can hit the ball out of the ballpark, and with the fact, well, not the fact, but with the likelihood that we will not be bringing Jose Abreu back next year, we've started to play Abreu a lot less, and we'll likely at least let the right-handed hitting House be our first baseman against left-handed pitching over this last month plus of the season. And not a bad start to the month of September. We took one of the final two games in Montreal after winning that first one 15-1, and then we took 2 out of 3 against the Angels at home. So I guess the only downside is that we were going for a sweep in 2 series in a row, and we failed to get the sweep in 2 series in a row. We've got the Royals and the Rockies at home this week. Those of you who have seen my OOTP 23 series, we started with the Royals and we ended up with the Rockies. So a couple familiar franchises there. Take a look at the standings as we get into these final weeks of the season. Still in 6th place, 17.5 back. Still some separation between the haves and the have-nots in the National League East, although the Pittsburgh Pirates look to be quickly falling into kind of the no man's land. 3-7 over their last 10, and they're now 4.5 out for the wild card. So going to be an interesting battle. In most divisions, the Yankees with an 8-game lead in the East have their magic number down to 18, but the Astros are only up 4.5. The Padres only up 3.5. And then the Nationals only up 2.5 in the NL East. So it could be some interesting pennant races as teams jockey to earn those divisional titles that ensure that they will be the only 2 teams in each league with first-round byes in the upcoming playoffs. And the second week in September was unfortunately a little worse for our Wings. We lost both series, lost 2 out of 3 at home against Kansas City, 2 out of 3 at home against Colorado. Now we've got to go on the road for the next week facing the Cardinals and the Reds. Check in quickly for those of you who are interested on how our prized prospect Deshaun Seifu is doing. You can see he's learning third base pretty quickly in AAA. So like to see that. Seems like his bat has finally got a little bit of a hiccup in AAA, hitting just .220, only 1 extra base hit through his first 11 games played. Has struck out 11 times in 41 at-bats. He's struck out a decent amount for a guy who is, according to the ratings, pretty good at avoiding strikeouts, but can see he remains very effective on the base paths. He's been caught stealing just 3 times across the 5 different minor league teams he's played with thus far this year. Been successful 19 times across those levels. Certainly, our scout still sees him as basically having the same type of profile that we thought he potentially could. So don't know whether he'll make it to the majors this year. May just try to get him as trained up as possible across those positions in AAA and wait until either coming out of spring training in 2027 or perhaps waiting a few weeks or a month or so to evilly manipulate his service time. And also we got to see what he looks like and what the rest of our team looks like. Certainly think that he would put up a representative performance if we brought him to the major leagues now. That said, I'd like to see him hit a little better in AAA before doing it. Don't want to just hand it all to him. Deshaun's got to earn some of it. And we did take 2 out of 3 against the Cardinals. So taking a look at the standings, we're still not technically eliminated from the playoffs. We lose one more game and we've got no chance of having a 500 season, although that was what was predicted by us in the not always accurate simulation at the beginning of the season. We should be able to get this team over 70 wins, which for an expansion team is not bad. You can see the Stars are about 4.5 games ahead of us in the standings, so they still have been more successful. But we're not going to lose 100 games, and there are already four teams in baseball: the Giants, the Rockies, the Blue Jays, and the Red Sox that have been eliminated from playoff contention, while we have not. So season certainly could have gone worse than it has thus far. And we did just lose to fall to 65-82, and combined with everything else that happened, that did mathematically eliminate us from playoff contention. Taking a look at the standings now, you can see we, the Marlins, and the Phillies have all been eliminated in the last 24 hours, along with the Rangers and the Royals. So the playoff fields are starting to sort out a bit. The Yankees' magic number down to 6, Astros down to 9. The two NL races a little tighter. Nationals up 2.5 on the Braves, Padres up 3.5 on the Diamondbacks, and still just a crazy National League wild card race with 8 teams battling for those 4 wild card spots, and 8 teams separated by just 2.5 games. So pretty intense battle for the NL wild card. The AL wild card a little different. Baltimore, Cleveland, and the A's in pretty good shape, and even the Tigers have a 4-game lead on the White Sox for the final wild card spot in the American League. One other thing I wanted to mention, Eric Pena, our young outfielder who we just brought up, actually he's been up enough to have 103 at-bats right now. We brought him up when Loydel Chappelle had that injury, but he's been diagnosed with a concussion, but it's not serious, and he should be able to resume play at full strength immediately. That doesn't really seem like the way that people would typically deal with concussions in 2026. Rub some dirt on it and get back out there, Eric. And the Capitals had a solid season, but they didn't make the playoffs. So we're going to try to ensure that Deshaun Seifu continues to get some playing time and bring him up to the majors. We just had to put, didn't have to, but we put pitcher Colby White on the IL. He's got a strained hammy that's going to impact him for a couple of weeks to open up one spot. Loydel Chappelle is also ready to come back at this point, so we are going to still need to send down one position player to make room for both Chappelle and Seifu on the Major League roster. And we're obviously going to ensure that Seifu plays every day while he's up in the majors over these next few weeks. And it may not be the most popular move with the fans, probably not going to be the most popular move in the clubhouse either, given his captain personality. But we've got 2 other captain personalities on our Major League roster. Jose Abreu is going to be 40. He's going to end his stint in Buffalo with a .238 average and 9 homers and 303 at-bats. We really started moving him out of the everyday lineup against right-handers a couple of months ago when we wanted to give more playing time to Nolan Jones. Ever since we brought Brady House up, Abreu's basically just been a bat off the bench. So we are going to go ahead and waive and DFA Mr. Abreu to get the second roster spot we need to allow Deshaun Seifu, who was the number 1 pick in the draft just about 2 months ago, I guess closer to 2.5 months ago, to make his Major League debut over these final weeks of the season. And not surprisingly, our manager wants Seifu to be batting first, which is clearly what we intend for him and where we intend for him to bat. Hopefully he's going to end up having a big-time Major League career. Our manager did have him in the DH spot in both of those, or our bench coach. I am the manager. I need to keep reminding myself. our bench coach recommended that he be DH. We're going to play him second base against righties, third base against lefties to continue giving him some work to enhance his fielding over these final few weeks of the season. And we don't even have to eat Abreu's contract because he's been claimed by both Cleveland and Washington. Cleveland's in the midst of a effort to get into the playoffs. Right now, they're up 4.5 for a wild card, and their magic number is down to 4. So maybe if Abreu ends up with them, maybe he can do some damage for him in the playoffs. And Washington, obviously, as we've talked about several times throughout the year, one of the top teams in our division. So he's going to hopefully have an opportunity to play some playoff baseball wherever he ends up. Kind of an interesting schedule for our Phillies, or for our Wings over this past week. We had the Phillies and the Marlins, two teams that we are battling with for the cellar in the NL East. We took 3 out of 4 at home against the Phillies, but then we got swept in a 3-game series in Miami. 6 games left at this point on the road against Atlanta in an NL East foe. And then we finished the final weekend at home against Pittsburgh, another NL East foe. And we've got the opportunity to play spoiler here. Would certainly love to get to 70-plus wins, so that's going to require, obviously, 2 more wins. We've lost 3 in a row, 3-7 in our last 10, and we're only up half a game on the Phillies, despite taking 3 of 4 from them for our goal of avoiding last place. So Atlanta's 2 out in the division. Pittsburgh is 5 out, so they're technically both in play for the division, although Atlanta has a much better chance. And Atlanta is up 1 on the 4th wild card spot. Pittsburgh's 2 out of a wild card spot. So should have an opportunity to hopefully do a little damage to the Braves and the Pirates season over the final week of Major League Baseball for the Buffalo Wings this year. Check in for those who are interested on what Deshaun Seifu has done. 9 for his first 39, so hitting .231, no extra base hits. He does have an insane 7 stolen bases, only 1 caught stealing in his first 9 Major League games. So the speed has definitely been a weapon for him throughout his rapid ascent through the minors, as we've talked about, and that is the one thing that has certainly continued at the major league level. And we finished September about as badly as you could. Lost 6 in a row on the road at Miami and Atlanta, and we were shut out 3 straight games against the Braves as they made the push for their likely division title after what they did to us. Their magic number is still down to 5, though. Tied with the Nationals. They've obviously made up the gap on them. The Pirates, we can still be spoilers to. They're 2 out with 3 games to go, so they've probably got to sweep us to get into the playoffs. Certainly would still hope that we could win at least 2 of these games to get to the nice round number of 70 wins. We'll see what happens. And you can see with the departure of Abreu and just kind of our poor play, fan interest has dipped to below 100 for the first time all season over the last couple of weeks, and also have been selling out a bit less consistently as the weather gets cold in western New York here in September and October. And our Buffalo Wings finished their expansion season on a high note, won 3 in a row against Pittsburgh to close out the season 71-91. Also eliminated the Pirates from the playoffs with that sweep. Taking a look at the upcoming playoffs, the Yankees with a bye and the Astros with a bye as the AL East and the AL West division title winners. The A's will be going up against the Guardians and the Tigers up against the Orioles in the wild card series. Padres win the NL West. The Braves do end up winning the NL East. Cubs against the Nationals and the Cardinals against the Mets in the 2 wild card series. We'll obviously do a deep dive on the season, who we want to bring back, how everyone performed in our next episode, but we will check in on the man, Deshaun Seifu. Ended up going 13 for 60 so a 217 average at the major league level. Pretty small sample size. Did have 2 triples, 2 ribbies. He ended up being stuck on those 7 stolen bases, so he didn't steal any bases over the last week of the season. One of the concerns that I know some of you have expressed in the comments about him, and it's a concern that I had too when we were drafting him, and since then, is that his eye isn't great. It still looks like it could get to a 50 if he develops fully, but no walks in his first 60 major league at-bats. Looks like he must have gotten hit by a pitch or 2 along the way to get his on-base percentage a little bit higher. But he's a major leaguer at this point. You can see we're going to have to decide whether we want to play him at second, third, or short. Hopefully we can get that error rating up another notch. We'll certainly feel better about him wherever he ends up for the long term if that error rating's a bit higher than it is today. The range is certainly fine. Turn double play is fine. The arm is more than fine for a second baseman. A little weaker than I'd like for a third baseman, honestly. But then the error rating is definitely lower than I'd want for a second baseman. Much lower than I'd want for a second baseman, and lower than I'd want for a third baseman, ideally. But although I think he can be a reasonably effective defensive player with a pretty good range, he is not going to be in the lineup for his glove. He is going to be in the lineup for his bat. And hopefully he can continue to develop. If he gets anywhere close to reaching that 80 contact potential, the 80 gap power potential, and the 75 avoid Ks, while perhaps most importantly, given that he's already at 60, 75, and 55 in those attributes, if he can get the eye up to a 50, where he's at least going to draw an occasional walk for us, with that speed, that ability to bunt and get on base and move other runners around, and the ability to potentially knock a ton of extra base hits, I think he could still be a pretty devastating offensive weapon for us, hopefully next season and for many years to come. Take a little deeper look at the standings and how everything turned out. We did end up tied for last, which was one of the things we wanted to avoid. 71 and 91 record ties us for last in the National League East with the Phillies. But the National League East was a pretty decent division. 71 wins is last place in the NL East, where it's 62 in the AL East, 65 in the AL West, and just 57 to be in last place in the NL West. Yankees at 106 and 56 are the only 100-win team in baseball. And a 3-way tie for the American League Home Run Championship or title between Alvarez, Franmil Reyes, and Austin Wells of the Yankees at 46. Matt Olson led the National League with 43. Jason Dominguez, who apparently has been traded to the Pirates, won the batting title at 329. Jose Ramirez is your American League batting champion. Taking a look at some of the key pitching stats in each league. Chase Dollander, 2.65 ERA. Carlos Rodon, 22 wins for the Yankees. That's not a number that you see much these days. And he also led the league with 276 strikeouts. Rodon was second behind Dollander in ERA at 2.92. Would have to think that Rodon is a likely Cy Young Award winner for the Yankees, coming off of that 7.8 pitcher WAR this year. National League, Spencer Strider with a pitching triple crown, leading the league with a 2.80 ERA, 21 wins, and 274 strikeouts. Somehow only ended up tied in pitcher WAR with Shohei Ohtani, who is a Cub. Ohtani put up a 2.81 ERA, and went 12-9 with 225 strikeouts. So Ohtani and Strider with both really nice seasons, but clearly would think that Strider and Rodon both have a pretty darn good chance of not just winning the Cy Young Award, but being unanimous Cy Young Award winners in each of their leagues. But we will find out all of that kind of information in the coming weeks and months of Fictional 2026. In our next episode, we're going to take a look at how all of our major leaguers performed in this 2026 debut season for the Buffalo Wings. Going to talk about who we may be moving on from, who we want to bring back, who we are not sure of. We'll finish as we started our episode, taking a quick look at upcoming free agents, and doesn't really look much different than it did before, unfortunately, as far as the batters. Christian Vasquez on our team, potential free agent. He's looking for pretty big money. The last time we checked in with him, I believe it was about $9 million a year. Now he's up to $14 million a year for 5 years for a 36-year-old that is great defensively, is a great personality, but just really can't hit at this point. I think that's a lot. He did hit 266 for us this year, kind of going back on saying that I was going to review all these players in the next episode, but since he's a free agent, we'll take a look at him. Looking at his batting ratings, I think we got the best out of him, getting a 266 batting average. Just don't see that happening again. Probably going to be moving on from him. Taking a look at the top pitchers who are going to be on the free agent market. Brayu, Beeks, Hader, and Phillips, some decent relievers. We're going to be more interested in a starter, potentially. We already talked about Kevin Gausman. Shane Bieber may be a guy that we'd take a look at. There'll be a lot of other guys that I'm sure we will be thinking about in the coming weeks. We are going to have some money to potentially spend, $61 million available for extensions. So we've got the ability to take on some contracts. We've got the ability to sign some free agents. And perhaps most importantly, we've got a guy who is a great prospect in Deshaun Seifu, who is a major leaguer just a few months after being drafted number 1 overall. Don't know, given that the regular season just ended today, whether our player development's going to look different. Still doesn't have the guys that we drafted recently on the board, but it does show us as the 5th best minor league system in the majors. So we've certainly made some progress over these past few seasons with the minor league system. Have to see how the rest of the youngsters that we picked up in the draft this year look. Looking at our AAA affiliate, Albany was 84-66. Didn't make the playoffs, but a pretty solid year. Utica and Jamestown were respectable. Marathon, not so much. Our rookie FCL team was respectable, and our rookie DSL team is an absolute disaster. So maybe we'll find some better international players in international amateur free agency this coming off season. And we still have some of the guys that we picked up over the years, most notably Santiago Marte, who we signed at the beginning of this year. Looks like the number 21 prospect in baseball. He's going to turn 18 in about a month, so he could very well be hopefully giving that DSL team a boost next year, which they certainly need based on their record. And with that, we are going to finish up the episode. Look forward to reviewing the entire season next time around. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.